Okay, buckle up for this one. I just came across a Reddit post, and the title alone is a doozy. Am I the a-hole for refusing to get rid of our family dog, even though the dog stresses out, overwhelms my wife?
Wow. That is a heavy topic right off the bat. I mean, we're talking about a family pet here, but also someone's spouse being overwhelmed. This is definitely going to be a complicated one. What's the full story? I need all the details.
So the guy and his wife met 8 years ago. Back then, she had just moved into her first townhome. About 6 months later, she gets this rescue puppy, a lab/shepherd mix. He says he wasn't super thrilled about her getting the dog at the time. It is a big commitment, but they'd only been dating for 6 months, didn't live together, so he felt it wasn't his place to say anything.
Yeah, that's fair. 6 months in, you're not really in a position to be dictating major life choices, especially when you're not even living together. A dog is a big responsibility. It is a living creature after all.
Right. So years go by, they get engaged, then married, and fast forward to now, they have 2 kids under 2 in a house they own together. Life's changed a lot since that initial puppy adoption. They have way more on their plate.
No kidding, 2 kids under 2 is a major life change in itself. That's a lot of work, a lot of stress, and probably not a lot of sleep. I can only imagine how a shedding dog would add to that. It is not an easy time for any parent, actually.
Exactly. The problem started when his wife was pregnant with their first child, about 2 years ago. She suddenly became very annoyed and frustrated with the dog.
Hmm. Pregnancy can do weird things to people. Hormones are all over the place. Sensitivities are heightened. It's possible that Owen played a role in her sudden change of heart towards the dog. It is a very intense time for women.
Totally possible. He says the dog is, by all accounts, a great dog. Very friendly, loving, cuddly, doesn't bark, great with other dogs and kids, you name it. But here's the issue. The dog is a massive shedder, and his wife is, in his words, a bit of a clean freak. He says there's dog hair everywhere, every day, no matter how often they vacuum and clean.
Ah, the dreaded shedding. Yeah, that can be a nightmare, especially for someone who likes to keep things tidy. And with little kids crawling around, I can understand the concern about dog hair constantly getting everywhere. It's a never-ending battle. I mean, even with regular vacuuming, it is still going to get everywhere. It is just a fact of life.
And ever since she became pregnant with their first child, she seems to have, as he puts it, hyper-focused on the dog's dirtiness. Now, she can't stand the sight of the dog around the house. She says the dog is too much of a shedder, is filthy, and is constantly in the way when she's walking around.
That's a big shift in attitude. It sounds like it's become a major point of contention and stress for her, which isn't good for anyone, especially with the added stress of 2 young children. It is not an ideal situation for anyone to be in, including the dog, I guess. It is creating a tense environment.
And now she wants the dog gone. She hasn't mentioned any specifics of how, like a shelter or anything, but she doesn't want to give the dog to someone they know.
That's rough. I mean, on the one hand, you can't just get rid of a family member because they're inconvenient or messy. It is a living being, not a piece of furniture. But at the same time, you have to consider the wife's feelings and the overall well-being of the household, especially with 2 young children. It is a really delicate balance. So what's the husband saying about all this? Is he just supposed to go along with it, or what?
He says he realizes she's overwhelmed by the shedding, but he doesn't think that's a reason to get rid of the dog. He also points out that if she knew lab mixes shed a lot, he doesn't understand why she picked that kind of dog in the first place. He thinks she didn't think the adoption through originally, which, is a valid point.
Okay, he's got a point there. It's important to research breeds before getting a dog, especially when it comes to things like shedding, grooming needs, exercise requirements, and all that. But at the same time, it sounds like the dog has been a part of their lives for a long time now, before the kids and the marriage. It's not like they just got the dog last week. It has been a part of the family for years at this point.
Yeah, it's a really tough call. I mean, on one hand, you don't want to add more stress to the household when there are 2 small children, but on the other, getting rid of a family pet is a huge deal and not something to be taken lightly, right? It can be really traumatic, especially for the kids, even if they are young.
Exactly. It is a really difficult situation. He's asking if he's the a-hole for refusing to get rid of the dog, even though it stresses out his wife. And honestly, I don't think there's a clear-cut answer here. It is not a black and white kind of issue. Yeah, this is a classic relationship dilemma. I mean, It's about compromise and finding a solution that works for everyone, including the dog. Maybe there are ways to manage the shedding, like more frequent grooming, or certain types of vacuums that are better at picking up pet hair. Or, I don't know, maybe designated dog-free zones in the house? It sounds like they need